This is episode 52 of the Life in Norway show. Around 18 months ago, Bodø was named a European Capital of Culture for 2024. Never before has a city so far north held the title. A team of people are now working hard to deliver an Arctic perspective on culture for today and tomorrow. On today's show, I speak with the programme director, Henrik Dagfinrud. We talk about the bid process, what they have planned for 2024, and what he hopes will be the legacy for the city, Nordland County, and all of Northern Norway. You can find out more about Bodø 2024 and everything we talk about today on the show notes page at lifeinnorway.net/podcast. Just look for episode 52. Happy listening. I'm joined today by Henrik Dagfinrud. He is the Programme Director of Bodø 2024. Henrik, thanks for joining me today.
Well, thanks for having me.
Bodø, if you live in Norway, you probably know a little bit about the town. If you don't live in Norway, chances are you probably haven't heard about it before. So introduce us to your city and the region of Nordland.
Okay, so let's do it from the region first. So the region of Nordland is, if you can imagine Norway as almost like a dog bone on the top of Europe, so you have the large part of the southeast and west parts of Norway, Oslo, Bergen, Kristiansand, maybe someone knows those cities, and then Norway sort of narrows as you go north, and just when you get to the middle of Norway, you start on the Nordland coast, and if you ask me, on the most beautiful part of Norway. And then the region of Nordland, the county of Nordland, stretches for the next 80 metric miles, something like that, 800 kilometers. And then slightly north of the middle of that, just inside of the Lofoten Islands, there is Bodø, the regional capital. And yeah, if you ask me, the gateway to the north and the gateway to Lofoten and the gateway to the Arctic, really.
And Bodø itself is a small, compact city. I've been there myself a couple of times with absolutely stunning surroundings. By the way, any listeners who are playing Norwegian bingo will have already picked up on the fact that you, like any good Norwegian, you called where you're from the most beautiful part of Norway. So well done. You've got everyone off to a good start today. But yeah, so small, compact city. But how small? How many people live in Bodø and in the surrounding areas?
Well, if you Google Bodø, you'll find that we're just above 50,000 people. So the city itself is probably half of that or a little more. It's a small town along the coast, but the municipality is around 50,000 people. So let's say the Bodø identity is around 50,000 people, and the city is really developed around. First, historically speaking, it's a fishing town, fishing village. And then after World War II, Bodø has been a NATO base, Air Force base, which means quite a lot of growth through that. Through the 60s, 70s, 80s, Bodø has grown steadily to the size we are today. And then we'll probably get back to this, but from 2012, 2013, around there, when we knew that the Air Force Base was about to be moved south into Trøndelag, the neighboring region, then really the idea of aiming to become the European capital of culture really started to take shape. But we can get back into that. We're still talking about the city itself. So in short, it's 30,000 people city with a 50,000 people municipality. And a busy little regional capital, really.
And there's a fair number of foreign citizens living in Bodø too.
Yeah, we have through this. I have to say, I'm not from Bodø. I'm from Oslo, or just outside of Oslo. So I came here in 2013. So I've been learning a lot about the city as we did this bidding process, and for example, the fact that we have more than 100 nationalities present was new to me, and that's, I guess, one of the real important aims with this project is to is to make that more visual, maybe in everyday life, and make sure that we identify ourselves as an international community. We have this. Maybe some of your listeners know, like Craig, who does the best chocolate of the north, I think, maybe in the world, and we have restaurants with really high quality international chefs, and so it's slowly but surely coming along, I guess.
Yeah, and just a couple episodes ago on the podcast, I spoke with a coach from Bodø Glimt, the football club, and of course there are several British people and other international nationalities involved there as well. So you've mentioned the capital of culture bid. That's of course why we're talking today. I think many people around the world, and certainly even in Norway, were quite surprised when Bodø was named one of the European Capital of Cultures for 2024, because it is a very small place. The city itself is just 30,000 people, as you said. So what was it that prompted a relatively small city to think, yeah, we can apply, not just apply for this, but we can apply for this and win this?
Well, I think there's two different parallel stories that's important to tell when we're trying to understand the reason why this project was launched in the first place. One is, as I briefly mentioned, Bodø has been growing steadily, and I think if you, let's say from the early 1990s, there's been really a development as a cultural town, not just as a regional capital administrative center, but I think Bodø municipality realized early in the 90s that they were for example, they were no longer on the touring schedule for the state touring theater because there were no arenas. So as the cultural life was professionalized, Bodø was sort of we were slowing down almost, relatively speaking. So a cultural development started, really a strategic arena development, professionalizing an orchestra, keeping the positions that was possible to keep within the cultural workforce, really trying to build from what was a very, very sparse starting point. But it worked over time, to the point where in 2014, the whole new cultural quarter opened, a new world-class concert hall and an award-winning library next to British architects, by the way. DRDH.
You're welcome.
And so that was that's one of the stories. It's a cultural development that really culminates in 2014, and then the municipality said, okay, at this stage, if we want to keep developing, we need to aim for people, synergies, contacts, co-working, co-producing, all the soft stuff. Now we have the library, we have the concert hall, we have the sporting facilities. I mean, we're sort of quite set with the physical cultural infrastructure. So that's one story. To fill all this cultural infrastructure with people, quality, competency, all those terms. The other story is that when trying to do this in Bodø, a small Nordland town, a regional capital in a region that is suffering from rural exodus, and demographic tendencies are quite bad for this region. So what happens if the regional capital sort of goes a little nuts and aims for the European capital culture, trying to grow while the region is going the opposite way? That's not a good dynamic. So that's why we made this into a regional project. So the county administration owns half of the project, and the city administration owns the other half. So then you have this is the political side of the motivation, so to speak. It's to take the next step from what is turning into a complete cultural infrastructure, and at the same time trying to get people involved and show off this region, that we want people We want people to come. We want people to have a look and maybe even stay, work, study. Yeah.
So you've been part of the application process since the early days. How did you feel when you heard that Bodø had won the status?
Just relief, really, just relief. It's, I mean, it's a huge task to run for a project like this. The bidding project is a very, very complicated process. It's not just about describing your city and ambitions, but it's also about making sure that this is integrated into the city long-term strategies, in the regional long-term strategies, that everything adds up. I mean, it's balancing out between what you have, what you can do, but also what you believe you can achieve in a 5 to 10 year span. So for our, I mean, Norway is a very what do you say? It's a committee driven system. So everything is inclusive. Everything is committees, and it's a sort of almost hyper democracy sometimes. So in our case, that means we had probably a couple of hundred people involved, which is of course a very, very challenging task to be creative in very large groups and systems of several groups trying to sort of collect ideas. So when we got to the what's it called, the designation or the awarding ceremony, it was just relief. we did it live on the square in front of the library with a big screen, and I think maybe 1,500 people showed up. School classes got an hour off from school to come down to the square and see this live stream from Brussels, where we had half of the team there and the other half had traveled back home the night before. And I mean, there was no plan B really. The live stream was up, so when you get to the decision is, it could have been Banja Luka, it could have been Mostar. And that, of course, then you have some explaining to do. But no, it was Bodø this time, and to me, just relief and I guess getting ready for the next stage.
So for all those people that were on the square outside the library cheering and whooping when the announcement was made, what are those people actually going to experience during 2024? I mean, is this just a year of concerts and maybe an art exhibition? You know, I presume there's a lot more going on than that, but what does it mean for the average person who's living in the city today?
Well, this can turn into a very, very long answer, but I'll try to sort of group it. I think for people who are not normally engaged in culture in some way or the other, I think what they will experience is a year where a lot is going on. It's hopefully it's a lot of surprises. We made it a strategic objective to make better use of unusual spaces. That's the one of the strategic objectives in the bid. So hopefully things of high quality, strange stuff, fun stuff will happen all around the region. So that's sort of one group of audience, I guess. Those who are not normally engaged will experience that this can actually happen close to where they are. That's one goal. For everyone who is slightly involved already. I mean, let's say everyone who is a keen audience, everyone who uses the library a lot, anyone who sings in a church choir, or I mean, all those people who are interested, the enthusiasts. I'm hoping that this will be a year and a lead up where they are more involved. That's a very high important ambition to us. That you want to be participating. That is a request from a lot of people when we try to involve the public or the communities. It's like, of course, it's good if I can get a free bus ride to the concert hall and see great European high quality cultural arts. But it's even better. A lot of people says this. It's even better if I can participate in some way, even if I'm volunteering. Just being part of a movement, I think is that's a great not demand, but request, I think, from people of Nordland. And then finally, for the professionals, and this is also part of the strategic objectives that we set out in the bid. This should be not just a year, but a period of time where we improve opportunities for cultural professionals. So we are quite lucky in this region. We have a professional orchestra, one of the youngest in the world, the Arctic Philharmonic Orchestra. We have quite solid structures within sound engineering, light, and we have the concert hall, as I said. I mean, a lot is going on, but what we are missing is sort of it's the wide base of cultural professionals that you get in a city. So it's difficult, we have to admit, and this is also written out in the bid. We have to admit that it's difficult in a small town to have a sort of a professional freelance base of professionals, really. So we talked about this just as we logged on, that I myself, when I lived in Oslo, I could sort of make it as a singer because I could add what I was missing by doing some voiceovers, some commercials, maybe some theater, maybe some school concerts. So you have this volume of activity going on that you can sort of feed off. And that's obviously more difficult when you go to a smaller town, smaller community.
How about for tourists? I imagine a big goal of this year will be to have huge numbers of people visiting the city, maybe for a specific event, a concert, or to see an exhibition, something like that. And then they stay for a day, a couple of days, maybe a week. Will there be parts of the program that are specifically designed to attract people into the city, as opposed to the platform building that you've been discussing for the last few minutes?
Yes, I'm thinking, if not maybe specific events, I'm not sure about that yet, but we've already started the process with the tourist operators, the travel industry, to make sure that we are sort of coordinated and working towards a common target. So maybe it's more, to me, I think it's more about creating a comprehensive program through this whole year to make sure that whenever you choose to arrive in Bodø, there will be reason to stop for a couple of days at least. Because I think one of our challenges is that in the beginning of this talk, I used the term gateway, and that's sort of it's a double-edged sword, I guess, because it also means that you pass through it quite quickly. So we have to just be realistic about that. A lot of people stay in Bodø for anything between 20 minutes for a change of flights to maybe a few hours when the ferry goes out to Lofoten. So I guess creating this stop effect both in Bodø and in other small towns along the coast. So I'm not quite sure about one big event that will attract audiences. Probably, hopefully, there will be that too. But I think the most important thing for us is to create sort of a vibrant, high quality cultural life that makes you want to stop whenever you're here.
So we're still around, at least 2.5 years away from the beginning of the actual event itself, the year-long events. So specific events, I imagine, are still to be announced, still to be planned in some cases. But with that in mind, which part of the program are you most excited about?
Oh wow, you're absolutely right. The specific events are yet to be produced, but maybe this is a very very, very safe reply, but I really sincerely mean it, that I think the multitude and diversity of things going on is what is the most exciting. I think every day we realize that there's more going on in Nordland and Bodø than anyone really knows or understands. All the time something new shows up, and you have to see this, or you have to taste this, and you have to hear them, or you have to see this. So I'm not sure what part of the program. I think, although it's still quite distant at this point, I kind of think that the large scale events is something that I'm looking very much forward to. And again, I think it's about this participation level, that if we can achieve events where a lot of people are taking part and having the sense of being part of something that is really, really high quality. So it's not just that they are participating and it's fun to have a lot of people, but if you can get the sense of being part of something important, I think that's a very intriguing part of such a project. You can have several large scale events where people sort of take part and feel like this is actually something significant.
I find my mind wandering back to the London Olympics in 2012. Mm-hmm. Obviously, and it's highly different scale when we're talking about events, but still. And I'm thinking about the opening ceremony and how that left everybody saying, "Oh, that was so British," and very, very different to any other Olympic opening ceremony that there'd been before. What part of the program will leave people saying, "Oh, that was so Bodø," or "That was so Nordland"?
Well, I think the outdoor events will. I have this. Okay. I have this picture in my mind of. This was probably a couple years ago, because it was before COVID. I heard this story about a group of British people that was visiting in Sulitjelma. It's an old mining town way up in the mountains above our neighboring city. So first you go from Bodø inland for an hour, and then you go straight up for an hour, just to keep it simple. So you get to the Swedish border up in the mountains, some of the highest peaks of Nordland, and up there is a high quality tourist destination is taking shape. So a group of British tourists were there, and they were there to see the Northern Lights, Aurora Borealis, and of course a snowstorm came in, so there was absolutely nothing to see. But this couple running the place, they said, "Oh, that doesn't matter. Go pack on your suits, or what's it called in English? Your thermal suits, your hats, your mittens, and even goggles, because it was a proper storm. Everything, just to get everything warm you can put on your body, and zip up and come on. We're going for a walk. There's no Northern Lights tonight, but you have to experience a proper storm." And of course, that seemed like a crazy idea, but through this sort of walking around like a pack of penguins around this small town way up in the mountains in a snowstorm where you can almost you can see anything, that experience turned out to be the highlight of that trip. Even though that night I'm not even sure if they ever saw the Northern Lights. I mean, that's, you never know when it shows up, but I think that's an example of what can be a very Bodø experience. Not necessarily a winter or a snowstorm, but it can be a midsummer night with the sun still up at 1 o'clock in the night. It doesn't set from late May to early July. The sun doesn't set at all. So maybe some of these surprising outdoor experiences And of course, in 24, we'll fill that with culture as well. So we can reach this goal of art of nature that we put in the bid, a main theme. So art in and within nature. I think, that will, I'm sure, lead to some very Bodø experiences.
Excellent. I wonder, has there been a city with the capital of culture title before that's been this far north?
No, it's the first Arctic city that holds the title, and of course that's what led to our title for the bid, articulation. So it's the bid is really, or the concept really starts off with the idea of wanting to show off more than just the typical postcard parts of northern Norway. So of course, this region, any day I can take you out around here to see reindeer or whales or sea eagles. I could probably, if you give me 10 minutes, I can help you with that. And in the wintertime or the late fall, you have the autumn, you have the northern lights, and you have the midnight sun, and all of this. But then there's also a dynamic society. There's a university, there's a concert hall, there's small arts projects popping up everywhere. There's a restaurant scene that is really turning into a high quality national standard or international standard restaurant scene. So that's why we ended up with this idea of we need an articulation, not just articulating the story, but actually articulating them.
And hooking into that theme, I think I remember reading that there's going to be at least some Sami involvement in the year. What sort of events can we expect featuring the Sami communities across Nordland?
Yeah, this is one of the most interesting questions, I think, because you're absolutely right. The Sami culture is very much a part of northern Norway, but I'm kind of or we are trying our best not to make that sort of an addition to another program, because it really isn't. It really is part of the northern culture. So of course, if you ask for specific Sami events, you will get a huge Sami festival week, the second week of February, around the National Day, the Sami National Day. You will get exhibitions of traditional clothing and jewelry and handcraft. You will get food like reindeer meat and herbs and all of these traditional parts. But you will also experience that it's very much part of the culture and of the program itself. So that's the ambition from the bid, is to make sure that this is not some sort of it's not an extra part, it's not an exotic part of the program that is sort of added, but it's part of the North, and it's one program that will be both Sami and Norwegian. Mm-hmm. That might seem like I don't know, like a theoretic difference, but I really think it's a difference. It's not like a museum of traditional culture, but it's more and more turning into a part of the whole of the North. So if you go back not too long, unfortunately, if you say before the 1970s, 80s, the situation was completely different, and the Sami rights were not at all where they should be. But slowly but surely, it's taking steps. And just this week, we had a meeting with the Sami Parliament and the president, and really trying to set up a proper cooperation and not just adding exotic parts and tokens to the program. That's not the way to go in the North.
That leads me nicely on to my next question, which is about your role in all of this. You have the title Program Director, and I imagine whilst that sounds exotic for a cultural annual event, it probably consists of answering emails and sitting in a lot of meetings. But What is your day-to-day role? What is it you're doing? You've just mentioned a meeting with the Sami Parliament there. At this stage, with almost 3 years still to go, what are you spending your time on?
Well, these days it's like a relay of Teams and Zooms meetings, trying to get a lot of people involved, really, to get institutions and organizations and artists into this concept, into these objectives and goals, and making sure that we create a common target, and then as we go forwards, as we develop the program itself, the program director role is to make sure that we balance out everything between the different forms of expressions, the different targets for our project. So, I mean, high quality art or arts is one part of this, but also sort of creating the movement and the participation and this community level needs to sort of support the sort of the pure arts program, and then this has to be combined with the right capacity building events, the right dialogue, the right sort of public critical dialogue, the right political settings, the right arenas that can sort of support our articulation, really. So that's both the fun part and the very complicated part of European Capital of Culture, that it's not just a festival. I mean, it ends up in something like a festival, but it should really be a celebration of something we have actually achieved, that we are a little more connected to continental Europe, and we are a little more part of the conversation, sort of on a very large scale, and not least that our artists and cultural operators, and as you said, the tourist industry, that we are more part of the European project. That's sort of it might be impossible to reach all these goals at once, but we have to start a movement, and then it continues from 25 onwards. So
let's finish up by talking about just that, the legacy. What happens after 2024? Because it's a common criticism of major events, Olympics, football tournaments, World Cups, things like that there's an awful lot of money spent on new infrastructure in the cases of sporting events for a very short period of time, and then everything moves on, and then you have all these white elephant structures, for example. Now, it's a little different in this case. I'm sure there's some infrastructure changes that will happen, but really it's about the amount of money that will be spent over this period of time in the run-up to 2024 and during the year itself. Is it going to be worth it? What does the city look like in 2029? Is there a long-term impact of the events you're planning in 2024?
Yes, this is probably the very core of the project, and we talked about it a little earlier. The motivation from the city's side, so from sort of official Bodø, this is the target, to create the long-term effects. And I think, at least from my experience so far, from sort of digging quite deep into this concept of European capitals of culture since 2017, I think this is one of the better examples of concepts that quite often turn out to work, to create change. And we've drawn a lot of inspiration from Liverpool 2008, for example, and the whole transformation of the docks area, and of course I'm sure there will always be criticism, but I think it's fair to say that Liverpool did achieve change in the image, and the image of the city and the cultural life of the city did in fact experience a change. So for us, if you ask for 2029, there will be some infrastructure change, because at that point we have moved our airport, which is, we haven't touched on that at all, but that's a different podcast, I guess. But the airport is moving 800 meters to the sort of end of the peninsula to open up a huge area. The whole airport area of today will become a 50-year development project. So again, our project is about the soft values and about the synergies and about the people that are supposed to fill this city. But that's one part. We will actually have opened up the city, like physically speaking. And I'm sure we'll manage to connect the cultural life more to the European scene. So I'm sure we will have a more international scene, more international corporations. So what we have in our bid talked of as the cultural hotspots. So the events or happenings or exhibitions that sort of pop up and become a hotspot in your everyday life, even if you live in a small town or a small village. I'm sure we'll have more of that. So the hotspots are closer together and greater in number. And I'm pretty sure, even though we're not aiming to do the sort of physical infrastructure projects connected to our project, I'm pretty sure we will have some new organizations and an actual increase in cultural workforce. I think the production base will be bigger, wider, and I'm pretty sure that the feeling of sort of visiting Bodø and there's always something going on, I'm feeling quite confident that will be a long-term legacy as well. That even in 29 you will experience a small town that is surprisingly dynamic and vibrant.
Well, Henrik, I wish you well for the next couple of years as you continue to plan for this exciting event in 2024. But before I let you go, I'm going to ask you the same 3 questions I ask every guest on the Life in Norway show, including the Norwegians. First of all, what's the best thing about living in Bodø?
Intentionally, I didn't prepare these ones because I wanted to just hear you ask them. So the best thing about living in Bodø is the people. No doubt, the people of Bodø is the best part. I have this quote. You shouldn't quote yourself, but at this in this bid, we have this quote where we say, "The colder the weather, the warmer the hearts." And I think that's a good description of the people of Bodø. So easy one there.
And what about the most challenging thing about living in Bodø?
Oh, the most challenging thing. Okay, I'll be honest now. The most challenging thing is the sort of shoulder seasons. The transition from summer to winter is a bit longer. The calendar is not hugely different from Oslo or Trondheim or the cities further south. I mean, it's not really that big of a difference, but it takes a little longer before spring arrives, and it takes a little longer from sort of the end of summer until winter properly starts. But again, connected to my first answer here, that is also the sort of, those are the seasons where you can get together and experience culture instead. So yeah, no, an honest answer there. It can be times where it's a bit dark and windy, but that's when you meet people.
I mean, I don't live in Bodø. I've visited several times though, and for me, the wind would be the number one answer. It's been the strength of the wind when I've been in that city has been incredible. So maybe I just had bad luck, but we'll see. Finally, Henrik, your favorite place, and I'm going to say in Norway, anywhere in Norway, whether that's a specific town, and you're not allowed to say Bodø, obviously, or a special spot somewhere on a mountain or in a cabin somewhere.
Oh, wow. Favorite spot. To me, it's very, very dependent on the season. So at this time of year, sort of spring turning into summer, I think I would actually have to say the place we talked about earlier, Sulis, way up in the mountains, when you get to this part of the year, when the days are actually, now we're at the point where the days are longer here than in the rest of Europe, and we're still at a time where you can have snowfall overnight and sunny days, and just this absolutely endless nature in the Nordland mountains. I'd have to say, and if you give me another few weeks, I'd say one of the beaches of the north side of Bodø.
I've not actually heard of this place before, so I will have to check this out and maybe visit once the travel restrictions are.
Yeah, you should.
Over.
You should dig into the story of the place. That's really, and it's connected to Trondheim actually, because this is one of the first spots of the whole sort of organizing of what's it called in English? The workforce organization.
Labor unions.
Labor union. Yes, thanks. It's one of the first sparks of the real labor union movement. So you have this affair in this town. It was one of the biggest towns of the north, a mining society, and then, of course, as history goes, the mines were sort of emptying, or the prices were falling, or the area was polluted, or a combination of these, and it ended up being a remote place for decades, and now it's picking up and becoming a very, very cool place to visit. Bring your skis, even if it's early June.
Well, I've just found it on the map, so I will check that out once we've wrapped up. Henrik, this has been fascinating. I'm really looking forward to hearing more about the program as it is gradually revealed in the run-up to 2024. Perhaps we can have another chat in maybe 2 years' time once we know a bit more concrete detail about the plans. I think that would be really interesting to hear. Where can people find out more about the project?
Well, they could follow our Facebook page, Bodø 2024, or Bodø 2024 on Facebook. You have to find the Ø on your keyboard, or you can visit Bodø 2024 NO. And
just so everyone's clear, that's not actually spelt the same way as the city is spelt in Norwegian. It's BODO 2024.no. Right. Which I think is probably the right choice for such a high-profile international event where people don't have the key on their keyboards.
No, exactly. That's exactly
a smart choice there. Henrik, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you.